And good morning, CSL Rockland. It is so good to be with you. I'm so grateful. I just want to do a little bit of a shout out to Reverend Melissa. Just so grateful for her to let me speak with you on this last Sunday in October. And in this last Sunday of October, I'm here to close out the series on healing. And we've been looking at a book called What It Takes to Heal: How Transforming Ourselves Can Change the World by Prentice Hempel. And this is what we as the science of mind practitioners, believers believe, that change begins with ourselves. It begins with our consciousness, with our ability to make choices. And we believe that as we make those choices, we are indeed co-creating the world. So what's at the center of this change? At the center of this change is love, divine love, which I call God. You know, the title of the last chapter is What's at the Center. But for me, it's not the last thing. It's the very first thing to start with. The very first thing to start with. The idea is that if we do everything from a place of love, as Chris said earlier, not that sentimental love, but love of self and love of others, what some people call agape love, the world would be a better place. And I believe that to be true. The author proposes that all social movements are founded out of love, love for you and love for me, love for each other, love for our society, that we can live and move freely without judgment, and we can come into the fullness of who we are. So let's just sort of look at that. The Black struggle, the struggle of African Americans in America, is a struggle that was a struggle born out of love for freedom of movement and the dignity of the people. The women's movement was a struggle, a choice for women to work outside of the home and to be able to make different choices in their lives, to have credit cards and have a financial freedom. The LGBTQ struggle, it was the right to love whomever you like and to marry that person, have it legally wed, and to live a relatively normal, dare I say, boring and ordinary life. That's what the LGBTQ struggle was about, coming into normalcy. And we come to, last but not least, the idea that love is at the center of all life. And I propose, as Bell Hooks does in her book, All About Love, New Vision, that the search for love continues. The search for love continues. This book and the work of Prentice Hempel was born after the 2012 death of the 17-year-old Trayvon Martin and the acquittal of his killer. There seemed to be, she said, an ongoing stream of deaths of Black men. And Prentice is a psychologist, one of few Black psychologists who found herself working to help alleviate this collective pain that was becoming a part of the country. She worked individually doing counseling sessions, and eventually she worked with the organization Black Lives Matter. And she looks at this idea of love as a psychologist would, intrapersonally, about our relationships with ourselves, with one another, and with the world. And she created something called healing justice. And this methodology, this form of healing was for those most deeply touched by the senseless murders that were taking place. It was a process of internal work when the world was seemingly at chaos. The question that she asked herself is, what would it take for us to heal? What would it take for us to come into wholeness? What would it take for us to be free? One of her colleagues, Esther Ama, did something kind of similar. And I just want to put up Esther Ama's framework. Esther Ama's father, Nelson Mandela, and she came to this from a global and international perspective, but she worked with Black Lives Matter, and she came up with something called emotional justice. And she says, we work through our feelings. We re-image our focus, and we build a future together. And I think that's really, really the bottom line to Apprentice Temple's work, is that we work through our feelings, and feelings are very important. We reimagine our focus, or we re-image our focus, and then we build a future together. So what is it about this healing? Well, Prentice Hempel believes that healing comes in moments as simple and as profound as this, when we are able to tolerate, to feel, and to express something in our relationships before it's just out of our reach. It reinstates our ability to choose something other than what our fear dictates. Love over fear. It will not make us perpetually nice or necessarily peaceful, but it will make our responses correlate with what's happening now. Healing, the author says, helps us to fight in places we need to, but love in places we long to. To be healed is to be able to express love freely, openly, without fear. Love of self, love of neighbors, love of the world. To be in a space and a place of love is to be in a place outside of fear. And we want that for everyone, and we want that even now. And I'll just tell you a short story that maybe you can relate to, maybe you can't, but it's definitely my experience at 5 a.m. this morning, just this morning at 5 a.m. California time. It's dark outside, and we're preparing for this big race called the Ironman. And I live in a beautiful, manicured neighborhood, but they block off the streets. So it's like a little cul-de-sac. And I said, being the conscientious citizen that I am, I'm going to move my car to a friend's driveway at 5 a.m. so that I don't disturb this race at all. So I get up, I move my car to my neighbor's driveway, and I'm walking back, and all I see are the police officers at every corner of my neighborhood, at every particular station. And I wonder, will they approach me? What will they do? It's dark, I'm walking outside, what will happen? Nothing happened, but it was still that sense of anticipation. We want a country that's free. We want a place where the police are our friends, that we don't have that fear of them, or that some of us don't have a fear of them. And I didn't necessarily have a fear. I just wondered, what will happen? And so it was in my conscious awareness. And I said, but I'm going to talk about love. So I'm just going to give love to those police officers, thinking they're probably as afraid of me as I might be of them. So that is indeed what happened. In this thing called you, Ernest Holmes says, if you wish to be healed, you must expect to be made whole. And this is physical, it's psychological, it's social. You know, in our spirituality, we know that we are already whole, perfect, and complete. You hear it, I hope, all the time. You are whole, perfect, and complete, because there's nothing to be healed, only more truth to be revealed. And that truth is revealed in love, in and through divine love, which is another name divine love is another name that I give for God. So in the spiritual realm, we know that we are already healed. We are already whole, perfect, and complete. But sometimes in the social realm, we know that there are ills out there in the world. We can't turn our eyes to that need to be healed. And I think if they are approached in love, by love, through love, from a consciousness of love, then we create a much different, loving, a world full of loving kindness, a world full of love. Again, I said Prentice takes on this idea from the stance of psychology. And just sticking a little bit with the spiritual point of view, if we were dealing, Ernest Holmes says, if you're dealing only with the power of thought, we should not expect to heal anything. But if you're dealing with universal principle, why should we limit its power? And that principle is that everyone and everything rests in divine love, in God, that there is, we believe, a large divine pattern, one energy field that's back behind all. And if you have the courage to operate from that place of love, from that place of compassion, both for yourself and for others, then you can transform the world. We have to lift up what is good, because it is the realization of the presence of God that is the most healing and powerful healing agency known to the mind of God. The presence of God, divine love, that awareness is the most healing, powerful agent known to man. That love is the principle that's working behind all. That God is the driving force, moving us towards our good. He's supporting us learning our lessons. That divine love is supporting us in our evolution to recognize our wholeness and to live in love. So I recognize that there's a divine pattern that flows in and through all, and that as we know this divine pattern, this energetic force, I believe, is absolutely pulling us, you, me, everybody, mankind, towards its ultimate good, to living in a space of love and peace and joy, where there is plenty for all. But where does it start? Absolutely. Where does it start? It starts on the individual level. Social change starting on the individual level. It's a unique viewpoint into this idea of social change, where sometimes we're looking at structures and society and in this larger part. Prentice looks at it individually. He looks at it right in the heart of where we are. It belongs and starts with each and every one of us. So as we choose to expand our consciousness, as we open up to divine love, and what she suggests is as we face our traumas, our hidden fears, that it takes courage to do the work, the real work of self-love, the real work of healing the child within, the real work of reparenting yourself, giving yourself whatever is missing. That is the hard work of self-love. And when you are able to love yourself, then you are able to give that out. You know, it's beyond bubble bath and spa days. There's nothing wrong with bubble baths and spa days. I would like more spa days. But we have to face our inequities and hold ourselves accountable to ourselves. But here's the good news. Even though it's called self-love, we're not doing it in isolation. You don't have to do this in isolation. Matter of fact, maybe you can't even do it in isolation to love yourself through. There's so many modalities through psychology to help you get to that healing, to heal those childhood wounds. You can do it with a practitioner. You can do it with a therapist. You can do it with a licensed counselor. But whatever you do, look at it and do it, because, you know, it's like the Bible says, we are to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. And how well do we love ourselves? We can know how well we love ourselves because it's reflected in how we treat our neighbors, what we think of our neighbors. But when we do our inner work, when we expand our own consciousness, when we dig deep and find that love for self, that love for in our inner child, when we cultivate that compassion for others, and that compassion for self and that forgiveness of self. When we do that work, when we transform our fears and past traumas and shower them with unconditional love, that is when we begin healing. So healing, I know it's been defined several times, but as we close this out, I just want to give Prentice's definition of healing. It's a process, often lifelong, of restoring and reawakening the capacities for safety, belonging, and dignity on the other side of trauma. There is no deeper healing than to know that you belong, to know that you are seen, and to wholly be accepted. It is the work and the mission of CSL Rockland. CSL Rockland then is a healing sanctuary. It is a place where people can come to be seen, to be held, to be whole, and for the people to see your wholeness. So Ernest Holmes says that there is a process in healing, but not a process of healing. The process in healing is the mental work and the time it takes to convince yourself and the practitioners, to convince whomever they're working with. It's the time and the mental work it takes to convince yourself of the perfectness of whomever you are working with. And it's the length of time it takes for whomever is on the receiving end to realize that perfectness. So the process in healing, it is this work of realizing the humanness, the humanity, the perfectness of who we are. So it starts with self-love. We're always in a space of healing. The author says, healing is not a place you arrive to. It is the ongoing work of enlivening our interiors, waking up our souls. Healing is an orientation to living rather than a destination. It's a commitment to mending and developing our emotional awareness and integrity. So I believe our world is kicking and screaming and fighting its way all the way to the recognition that we are one, that we're all related as human beings, that we are in this trying time. And I believe this is a trying time because we are in the midst of a great evolution to rediscover what we already know, that love is at the center, that we are all one. And it's important to get in touch with those emotions because emotions are the trigger for the law to work. So if we're in the emotion of anger, then our effect is going to be something like war or poverty or disillusionment or depression. But if we are in the emotion of love, what outcomes could possibly there be? I'm going back to Ernest Holmes, but now 1926. He says, we believe in a universe of love as well as a universe of law. They complement one another. The universe of love is pulsating with feeling and emotion, and the universe of law is the executor of the feelings and all of the emotions. And it's the feelings that ignites and activates the law into motion. So as we work on our own feelings, clarifying what we want to see as the world that we live in, as we clarify our visions, as we clarify our dreams, and as we do this all from that space of love, we do it not just for ourselves, because love is not selfish. Love is giving. We do it for our children. We do it for our neighbors. We do it for our coworkers. We work on this vision of a world that's safe, where everyone belongs, where people are seen and heard. This is the world that expresses love, and it allows us to experience the fullness of life. This world helps us move from the place of surviving to one of thriving. And it begins with ourselves, with that ongoing healing journey of self. Divine love, the revealing, the accepting, the acknowledgement of God. God, at the center of our lives, God at the center of our decisions, God at the center of our choices, God and love. If God is a hard word, then love. Love at the center of our choices, love at the center of our being, love at the center of our world. Imagine that world, and you have the power to make that world happen. It is in your hands sooner than you think. It is in your hands right now, today. Now, it's hard to talk about social change and be an African American from the South and not quote Dr. Martin Luther King. So just forgive me. So Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he has a collection of sermons called The Strength to Love. The Strength to Love. And this is what he says. When I speak of love, I'm not speaking of some sentimental or weak response. I speak of a force of which all great religions have seen as the supreme unifying principle of life. The supreme unifying principle of life. Love is somehow the key that unlocks the door to the ultimate reality. The Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, and Buddhist belief about this ultimate reality is summed up in the first epistle of St. John, sorry. It's the first epistle of St. John. Let us love one another, for love is God, and everyone that loveth is born of God and knoweth God. That's Martin Luther King Jr. Let us love one another, for love is God, and everyone that loveth is born of God and knoweth God. So when we approach this idea of social change, social justice, healing justice, emotional justice as avenues, let's just approach them as avenues to know and express more of what God is. Let us approach it through the lens of love, through the lens of compassion. As we work on ourselves, as we work on our consciousness, let's not just make this world a better place for me or for you alone, but let's work on making it a better place for everyone. And when we work in love, I think we do that. We make it a better place for everyone. Divine love, God is the healing agent. When we come to this idea of social change through spiritual connection, we honor our oneness, we honor our interconnectedness. We know that together we can transform the world into a place where love is at the center. We can hold that vision, can reimagine the world that we want to live in. Every day we can awaken love to the practice of loving kindness. We can move through this world recognizing, seeking, and raising our awareness to divine love, looking for examples of love, being examples of love, giving and doing small acts of kindness in love, unconditional love. And in doing this, we are healing daily. We're growing into greater expressions of who we are meant to be. So let's take this message into prayer. Let's just take it into prayer. Whew. Knowing that there is only one. There is only one energy, one divine pattern, one immense, that I don't even have the word for it, that I call God, that it is back behind all, and that it is a pattern, it is an energy, it is a force of good and for good. It is a force of and for love. And knowing that each and every one of us, that I am a force for love, and that I am a force for good as an expression of this larger force, and that each and every person here is an expression of that larger force, an expression of good, an expression of love, an expression of loving kindness. Oh, I just speak my word. I speak my word right here and right now. That as we move through these somewhat turbulent times, that we are peace in the storm, that we are joy when there's sadness, that we lift up those that are depressed or confused, that we are the light in the darkness of this world, that we are the love that we do acts of love, that we are love and we do acts of love. Oh, I'm just speaking this word now, knowing that that love and peace and joy and freedom belongs to all. And I'm grateful and thankful. I'm grateful and thankful first and foremost for this United States of America, that we live in a land of peace and prosperity, that we live in a land that people rush to get to, that we live in a place where there's clean water, that we live in a place where I don't have to go to the river and put the bucket on my head, that we live in a space where we can turn on the tap. I am so grateful and thankful that we live in a place where the financial systems are holding, they're holding, that we live in a place where there is an overwhelming sense of peace. I'm grateful and thankful for that. And I am knowing that this peace and this love and this prosperity continues. And I am releasing this word and freedom and freedom and freedom. And I am releasing this word into the law. And together we say, so it is.
And so